Assalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Today we have decided to change the background a little bit and to go out in the nature, even though it's a little bit hot, but we're just trying to enjoy the creation of God and perhaps contemplate a little bit. And we're continuing today with Mishkāt al-Masābīh, the Hadith compilation book, and we're going to read today from Hadith number 8 and Hadith number 9. So we're going to try to keep it short today. These are very important hadiths. And instead of starting with hadith number 8, I'm going to start first with hadith number 9. And you will know the reason why. Both of these hadiths, they talk about tasting the sweetness of faith or finding the sweetness of faith. Let me say it again. These two hadiths, they talk about either tasting faith. I mean, you cannot literally taste the faith, but we're talking about a spiritual taste. So tasting faith spiritually, or finding the sweetness of faith. And somebody will say, what is the difference between these two? The first one, tasting, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to constantly receive that taste, or you're not necessarily indulging yourself into the sweetness of faith constantly. But the other hadith that talks about finding the sweetness of faith, it refers to constantly remaining attached to the sweetness of faith. Or in other words, indulging your spirituality in the sweetness of faith constantly. So here Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in both of these hadiths, he gives us how to simply taste faith and how to, what are the spiritual practices that we can find the sweetness of faith. So as I said, I'm going to start first with hadith number 9 and then go to hadith number 8, because hadith number 9 is more general. And this hadith, وعن العباس بن عبد المطلب عن العباس ابن عبد المطلب رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذاق طعم الإيمان من رضي بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا. رواه مسلم. This is an authentic hadith that comes to us from the uncle of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him. His name is Abbas. He said that he has tasted the flavor of faith, who is pleased with God as his Lord, with Islam as his religion, and with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as his messenger. So in other words, somebody who accepts these general teachings of Islam, which is believing in God, accepting Islam as your path of life, as your deen, and also accepting Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as your prophet and messenger, then you have tasted faith. So here it can refer to even those people who may not necessarily be very practicing, but simply embrace this religion with a conviction and believe in these articles mentioned in this hadith. They will definitely taste faith. And the other hadith, it goes more into details, because as I said earlier, it talks about finding the sweetness of faith. So not just finding faith, but finding the sweetness of faith. Let me read to you the hadith in the Arabic language. عن سيدنا أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثلاث من كن فيه وجد بهن حلاوة الإيمان من كان الله ورسوله أحب إليه مما سواهما ومن أحب عبدا لا يحبه إلا لله ومن يكره أن يعود في الكفر بعد أن أنقذه الله منه كما يكره أن يلقى في النار. Hadith متفق عليه. So Sayyidina Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was one of the younger companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he narrates this hadith, and he mentioned that that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, mentioned there are three things which if they are in anyone, that person will find the sweetness of faith. And he goes on by saying, number one, it is that person, he to whom Allah and His Messenger are dearer than all else besides them. So it is the person who has come to a realization and a belief that Allah, the Creator, and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, are more beloved to that person than anything else in this world. In other words, that person has really understood the meaning of قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Say that my prayer, my sacrifice, my life and my death are all for the sake of God, meaning that everything revolves around the love of God and His Messenger. They live for that love, and they have a yearning to look forward to meet with God in the hereafter and with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not a physical meeting, but they're looking forward for the hereafter to find God and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those are among those who can taste the sweetness of faith. But not only. It talks about the second condition. Number two, another person who loves someone else for the sake of God. Again, we live in a world where this concept is very foreign. A lot of people say, I love such person because that is my brother, or I love an ex-person because that is my mother or father or relative or very close friend, and I love these people. Genuine love, no doubt about it. But the concept of loving somebody else for the sake of God, it is predominantly a strange or a foreign concept. So, you love another person for the sake of God because that person loves God, or because that person is a creation of God, or because that person obeys God and His Messenger, or loving for that person even if that person is a bad person. You still love that person in a sense that you love to see that person be better, be guided, just as you are. So there is this attraction, or there is this, I would say, a wish, but it is also connected to love. You wish for the other person to be guided just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you. As a matter of fact, I'm reminded of another hadith where an angel comes across another person who goes to visit another person just for the sake of God. Not that he has an interest, not that he's looking forward to do some business transactions, but simply for the love of God, for the sake of God. Because he knows that by visiting another person, the love will increase. The respect, the mutual respect between these two individuals will increase. Therefore, the angel comes and he says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to visit my brother for the sake of God. He says, are you sure? He says, yes, I'm doing it for the sake of God. Therefore, the angel tells to that person that just as you love your brother, that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you as well. So, here, this is a very important concept, and we need to talk about it. We need to teach our youngsters about this important concept of not necessarily being attached to other people based on our personal interests, but be attached especially to those that are righteous for the sake of God. And the other one, the third category that is mentioned in this hadith, is about that person who hates to return to disbelief after God has brought that person, just as he would hate to be thrown into the hellfire. This is also a very relevant issue because there are many people out there who, unfortunately, because of different circumstances, because of not finding available people to continue teaching them when they become Muslims, all of a sudden they drop their faith. They either go back to what they used to be before, or they simply end up believing in nothing. And that is very dangerous. Again, there are other individuals who are learned that are responsible for this as well, because if you know that in your community there are people who embrace Islam and they're looking forward, to learn how to pray, they're looking forward learn how to make wudu, they're looking forward to learn how to read the Quran, to understand the Quran, and many individuals in the community can do that. Yet people, they choose to live their individualistic life and care less about the others, and that's a big problem. And if there are such cases like that where a person is going back to disbelief because there is a lack of interest from the community members, then everybody is to be blamed about that. Everybody is held accountable in front of God for not helping those that are in need when it comes to receiving information about Islam. So it's a big responsibility. Understands Islam, accepts Islam, and just all of a sudden decides to go back to disbelief. Right. So again, the hadith says somebody who hates. I take it back. Not necessarily somebody who goes back to disbelief, but somebody who hates to go back to disbelief. I mean, the person does not even think about going. The person not only does not think, but the person, as a matter of fact, hates to go back to disbelief. Just as he would hate, or she, in this case, would hate to go back to go to the hellfire. Nobody wants to go to the hellfire. So these individuals, they don't even, they see that so far from themselves of going back to disbelief. They're so well connected to the principles of Islam and to the practice of Islam, and they have engaged themselves spiritually to some higher levels, and they just simply don't even think, and they just simply hate. They would hate to go back to disbelief, as they would hate to be thrown into the hellfire. So again, these are some details of those individuals. These are individuals who are really connected well with the religion, and these would be some of their signs, some of the indications. Again, number one, that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and God, they become more beloved to that person than anybody else. Number two, the second indication is that they would love another person. These individuals would love another person for the sake of God. And the third one is that the person would hate going to disbelief as he would hate to be thrown into the hellfire. Again, we talked first about a general concept of accepting Islam and God and Prophet, and that is tasting faith, whereas the second hadith talks about more details and talks about finding the sweetness of faith. You can constantly remain indulged into that experience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our love for Him, increase the love for His Prophet, increase the love for those who are righteous as well, and for the humankind, His creation. And may He also make us among those who hate to go back to disbelief. They are strongly connected with His beautiful religion. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد.